Hi guys, it's Miss Lambert again. We're going to do part 2 of chapter 1. We are doing Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Of course, it was written by J.K. Rowling, and this version of the book has been illustrated by Jim Kay, who did a phenomenal job. My last video kind of got cut off, so we are going to pick up where we left off. I do apologize for the abrupt ending, but I did not want to have to redo it. So, and again, we're doing Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. We started chapter 1, The Boy Who Lived. And these are just going back over some of the pictures. They start talking about the Dursleys and how perfectly simple they were. Professor McGonagall arrived at the house, and she's been watching the house at number 4 Privet Drive. And of course, she's been waiting for Dumbledore to appear. And then the newsmen were talking about the owls and how oddly they were behaving. And Mr. Dursley saw some things that came up during that. And then, of course, that night after they go to sleep, Professor Dumbledore shows up. And the last thing that you heard me talking about was he was waiting on Hagrid. And of course, he said that Hagrid was late. And so Professor McGonagall wanted to know why they were coming here. And so this is Professor Dumbledore's response. So we'll start here with Professor McGonagall. Yes, said Professor McGonagall, and I don't suppose you're going to tell me why you're here of all places. Well, I've come to bring Harry to his aunt and uncle. And they're the only family he has left now. What, you don't mean? You can't mean the people who live here, cried Professor McGonagall, jumping to her feet and pointing at number 4. Dumbledore, you can't. I've been watching them all day and you couldn't find 2 people who are less like us. Oh, when they got the son, I saw him kicking his mother all the way up the street, screaming for sweets. Harry Potter, come and live here. What is the best place for him? Said Dumbledore firmly. His aunt and uncle will be able to explain everything to him when he's older, or written him a letter. A letter? Repeated Professor McGonagall faintly, sitting back down on the wall. Really, Dumbledore, you think you can explain all this in a letter? These people will never understand him. He'll be famous, a legend. I wouldn't be surprised if today was known as Harry Potter Day in the future. There will be books written about Harry. Every child in our world will know his name. Exactly, said Dumbledore, looking very seriously over the top of his half-moon glasses. It will be enough to turn any boy's head famous before he can walk and talk. Famous for something he won't even remember. Can't you see how much better off he'll be growing up away from all of that until he's ready to take it? Professor McGonagall opened her mouth, changed her mind, swallowed, and then said, Yes, you're right, of course. But how is this boy getting here, Dumbledore? And she eyed his cloak suddenly, as though she thought he might be hiding Harry underneath it. Hagrid sprang in him. You think it wise to trust Hagrid with something as important as this? Oh, I would trust Hagrid with my life, said Dumbledore. Well, I'm not saying his heart isn't in the right place, said Professor McGonagall grudgingly. But you can't pretend he's not careless. He does tend to... What was that? A low rumbling sound had broken the silence round them, and it grew steadily louder as they looked up and down the street for some sign of a headlight, and it swelled to a roar as they both looked up at the sky, and a huge motorbike fell out of the air and landed on the road in front of them. If the motorbike was huge, it was nothing to the man sitting astride it. He was almost twice as tall as a normal man and at least 5 times as wide. He looked simply too big to be allowed, and so wild. Long tangles of bushy black hair and beard hid almost all of his face. He had hands the size of dustbin lids, and his feet in their leather boots were like baby dolphins. In his vast muscular arms, he was holding a bundle of blankets. Ah, Hagrid, said Dumbledore, sounding relieved at last, and where did you get that motorbike? Borrowed it, Professor Dumbledore, sir, said the giant. climbing carefully off the motorbike as he spoke. "Oh, yon Sirius Black lent it to me. I've got him, sir." "No problems, were there?" "Oh, no, sir. House was almost destroyed, but I got him all right before the muggles started swarming around. He fell asleep as we was flying over Bristol." Dumbledore and Professor McGonagall bent forward over the bundle of blankets. Inside, just visible, was a baby boy, fast asleep. Under a tuft of jet black hair covered his forehead. They could see a curious shape, like a lightning bolt. "Is that where—" whispered Professor McGonagall. "Yes," said Dumbledore. "He'll have that scar forever." "Couldn't you do something about it, Dumbledore?" "Even if I could, I wouldn't. Scars can come in useful. I have one myself above my left knee, which is a perfect map of the London Underground." "Well, give him here, Hagrid. We'd better get this over with." And Dumbledore took Harry in his arms and turned towards the Dursley house. Could I say goodbye to him, sir?" asked Hagrid. He bent his great shaggy head over Harry and gave him what must have been a very scratchy, whiskery kiss. Then suddenly Hagrid let out a howl like a wounded dog. "Shh!" hissed Professor McGonagall. "You wake the Muggles." "Sorry," sobbed Hagrid, taking out a large spotted handkerchief and burying his face in it. "But I can't stand it, Lily and James dead and poor Harry Potter with the Muggles." Yes, it's all very sad, but get a grip on yourself, Hagrid. We'll be found," Professor McGonagall whispered, patting Hagrid gingerly on the arm as Dumbledore stepped over the low garden wall and walked up to the front door. He laid Harry gently on the doorstep, took out a letter out of his cloak, tucked it inside Harry's blankets, and then came back to the other two. For a full minute the three of them stood and looked at the little bundle. Hagrid's shoulders shook, Professor McGonagall blinked furiously, and the twinkle light that usually shone from Dumbledore's eyes seemed to have gone out. "Well," said Dumbledore finally, "that's that. We've no business staying here. We may as well go and join the celebrations." "Yeah," said Hagrid in a very muffled voice. "I'd best get his bite away. Good night, Professor McGonagall. Professor Dumbledore, sir." Wiping his streaming eyes on his jacket sleeve, Hagrid swung himself onto the motorbike and kicked the engine into life. With a roar, it rose into the air and off into the night. "Oh, I shall see you soon, I expect, Professor McGonagall," said Dumbledore, nodding to her. Professor McGonagall blew her nose in reply. Dumbledore turned and walked back down the street. On the corner he stopped and took out the silver put-outer. He clicked it once, and 12 balls of light sped back to their street lamps so that Privet Drive glowed suddenly orange, and he could make out a tabby cat slinking around the corner at the end of the street. He could just see the bundle of blankets on the step of number 4. "Good luck, Harry," he murmured. He turned on his heels, and with a swish of his cloak, he was gone. A breeze ruffled the neat hedges of Privet Drive, which lay silent and tidy under the inky sky, the very last place you would expect astonishing things to happen. Harry Potter rolled over inside his blankets without waking up. One small hand closed on the letter beside him, and he slept on, not knowing he was special, not knowing he was famous, not knowing he would be woken in a few hours' time by Mrs. Dursley's scream as she opened the front door to put out the milk bottles, nor that he would spend the next few weeks being prodded and pinched by his cousin Dudley. He couldn't know that at this very moment people, meeting in secret all over the world, were holding up their glasses and saying in hushed voices, "To Harry Potter, the boy who lived." And next time we'll look at chapter 2, guys, The Vanishing Glass. And so that is chapter 1, talking about Harry Potter and the boy who lived. And so Hagrid brought him on Sirius's motorcycle that he borrowed. Of course, his parents were killed by Voldemort, or he who must not be named. And Harry has been brought to live with his aunt and uncle because Dumbledore thinks it would be better. Alright, guys.